Hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. I'm going to record a Fragrance Friday today, even though I had toyed with the idea that perhaps I wouldn't record until after Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, which is on Monday. Um, I don't think it's too frivolous to talk about makeup and perfume and fragrance and all the things that give us joy in life. A lot of people have been moaning on, certainly on Twitter, about the amount of coverage of Her Majesty's death and the whole process, which I think it's a bit sad that, people can't just turn over to a different TV channel if they don't want to watch the BBC's admittedly endless rolling coverage. Um, Mixed feelings, really. It is a big moment, I think, in our country's history. People like me, most people have known no one other than Queen Elizabeth, the Queen, as our head of state. So even if you are not very pro-royalist, there's a definite feeling of end of an era. And I think most people had respect for Her Majesty as a person, whatever they thought of the institution. I'm actually pro the institution in terms of a constitutional monarchy when you look at the alternatives. But obviously, that isn't everybody's take on things. I haven't gone to the lying in state. I did take some flowers to Buckingham Palace very early on last week with some American friends who are extremely pro-royalist, and we queued to lay our flowers and have a look at all the lovely notes and gifts and flowers that had been left, many of them by children, but some of them by people who had personal memories to offer of the Queen. And it was a lovely atmosphere, actually, very friendly, warm atmosphere in the very long queue and the many hours waiting to get to Buckingham Palace gates. And if it doesn't sound wrong, we actually had a lovely day. So that was my experience, and I shall watch the funeral, obviously. I thought what I'd do today, as it's Fragrance Friday, and I intend to do a similar one on Sunday about makeup and cosmetics generally, that the Queen was said to like. I think we actually know very little about her preferences. We do have the clue of the royal warrants, which are offered to shops that she patronised regularly, although some of them are a kind of leftover from previous patronages, for example, by the Queen Mother. Floris, which is an independent fragrance house in the UK, in London, has a royal warrant. I mean, just looking at the bottle, there's a royal warrant from Her Majesty the Queen and a royal warrant from the then Prince of Wales, of course, now King Charles III. It's a really old fragrance house, I think by far the oldest I've talked about to you. Founded in the 1700s, 1730s, I think. So it's been around a really long time. And they have some interesting storefronts. I'm familiar with the one in Jermyn Street, which is absolutely beautiful. If you ever have the chance to go and visit, it's well worth a visit just to look round, because it's like going into a beautifully kept up and how do I say this, modernized museum, because if I said a museum, that would sound completely dusty and dull. It's not, it's really beautiful. I think they do have a small museum actually at the back, but I haven't been in there. I think that's a relatively recent innovation. But you definitely get a sense of the history. You definitely get the sense of the personal touches in creating new products, and of course the history of the products that have been around for a very long time. Now, it is said that this fragrance, Floris White Rose, was a favourite of the Queen, and that she wore it on her wedding day. I don't know how true that is. When the Queen died, and I was actually looking, thinking about making a couple of videos about the products that she favoured, it's quite surprising how little we know, particularly something like a fragrance, because presumably people would smell it over time and kind of report back. I think we have, fairly clear idea of some of the fragrances that Diana, Princess of Wales, for example, favoured simply because people smelled them. And the same certainly has been reported in relation to the Duchess of Cambridge, now Kate, Princess of Wales. But not so with the Queen. So it's all slightly by report. We do know because of the royal warrant that she obviously did buy some of their products. And White Rose is a fragrance that you can kind of imagine her liking. My research tells me that it was first formulated in 1800, if you please. So up there with Queen Victoria's time. It doesn't smell as old and fusty as that, let me tell you. And surprisingly, I bought this bottle post the Queen's death. I have had some Floris fragrances in the past, and I like them. They're really quality products. I was a bit doubtful about getting this, and I got it with some discount because of the rose, because it's not my favourite note, to be honest. But I have to say, this does it really, really well. If you read reviews, some people say they can't smell the rose at all. I definitely can, particularly when you first apply, but it's a really natural kind of grassy rose. I don't know if that makes sense. When you actually smell roses and rose petals, they have that kind of vegetation smell, to me, that is very seldom actually captured in synthetic renditions of a rose. And this formulation has that for me. It definitely also has clear violet, but again in a very soft, not kind of Parma violet way. I should tell you what the notes are supposed to be. The top notes are aldehyde, which is interesting, isn't it? Because that can't possibly have been in the original formulation of this fragrance back in 1800, because they simply weren't discovered then. Chanel fragrances are the first, Chanel number 5, memorably to use aldehydes in the early 20th century. But it also explains why this formulation does smell both traditional and modern, because I always think that aldehydes, notwithstanding their uses over a century old, give a modern kind of champagne-y pop to fragrances. And that's definitely true here. So going back to the top notes, aldehydes, carnation, said to be a great favourite of the Queen, carnation, which is maybe why people are convinced this is the one she likes at Floris. And then green notes. The heart notes are iris, rose, jasmine and violet. And I think you can get all of those when you have a sniff. And that whole kind of formulation, the aldehydes in the opening draft, as it were, iris, rose, jasmine, particularly those threesome, are very Chanel notes, which kind of explain to me why I quite like this. And then the base notes, amber, musk, and powdery notes. And in the dry down, there is definitely a powdery element, which can be tricky, can make a fragrance smell quite sophisticated, but if it's overdone, can make it smell rather fusty and old lady and old fashioned. Guerlain in particular, I think, do powder really well, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. But in this fragrance, actually, I've been really surprised this week. I've been wearing it for almost a week now. No, not quite. 6 days. It's a really nice combination. It's definitely a fairly all-purpose fragrance. I would regard it as feminine rather than masculine. It's definitely a clean and kind of discreet fragrance, not in the sense that it has no power in it, because you can definitely smell it, and it has quite a good last on my skin, interestingly, and not as much on my clothes. Often it's the different way round with modern fragrances, I find. I've only got the eau de toilette, and it packs a fair punch for an eau de toilette, with a good last, I would say, 4 to 6 hours. Very, very clearly smells on the skin and around. And not inappropriate at this time of year. I think it could be a year-round fragrance, although obviously the strong floral elements make you think particularly of spring and summer. So a really pretty fragrance. It would be very appropriate for a bride, particularly, a bride in the 50s. Was it the 50s when she got married? You could well imagine the Queen wearing this, and I do like it. The other fragrance, just as a kind of end note, that quite a few articles say the Queen liked and wore, slightly more surprisingly, Guerlain's L'Air Bleu, which I do have, although I haven't worn it for a long time, and I might do a little section on that next week. I can definitely see how someone who liked this Floris fragrance might grow into L'Air Bleu, because there are certainly some parallels between them. So I thought that was interesting. So I'm going to hopefully speak a little bit on Sunday about what I found out about the skincare and cosmetic products that the Queen used. So I'm giving you advance warning. If you're over swamped with funeral talk, morn porn, as they're calling it here in the UK, then you'll want to give my video a miss on Sunday. But I hope to speak to the rest of you. And until then, bye for now.